We are recording this meeting today. I think, have you all on mute right now and ask that you stay muted so we don't have any feedback during the feedback sound during the presentation. There will be opportunity for you to ask questions. We ask that you put your questions in the chat. I'll take breaks during the presentation and we will check on those questions in the chat and then try to answer those. If we don't have answers for you yet, we'll try to get those. And so we have a lot to talk about in this 2 hours today, a lot to cover. We started out the presentation here with a little compass in our picture because we are going to be heading out into many new directions over the next few years. And so we want to talk about some of that here today. Okay, David. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to run through, do a quick roll call to see who's on the call. We're going to talk about the 21 LIHEAP expenditures, the upcoming 22 LIHEAP funding. We're going to talk about the new 22 DOE allocations with the addition of weatherization readiness funds. And then a large part of our meeting will be on the bipartisan infrastructure law funds, the bill funds. And then Darren Farrell is on the call and he will be giving you an update on the high weatherization deferral funding. David Caldwell will be talking a little bit about the technical monitoring that we've been doing, touch very briefly on the DOE Weatherization Program Notice 22-8 with regard to weatherization priority list, and then a little on the new income limits. Okay, let's dive in. So roll call, I've sort of been checking the list here as people were signing on, and I see Stephen from APCA, Patrick from Bay Aging, Ken from Central Virginia. We have Robin from Clinch Valley, and I think Sandra. Saw Megan on from CHP. Do we have anybody from LNCAG on the call? If you could unmute yourself and just let me know. Okay. Saw folks from Mountain Cat. Amanda from People. We've got Pitt County on the call. Project Homes. I saw Carrie. Rooftop. I saw Sandy on there. STEP. Do we have someone from STEP?
Yes, ma'am. Felicia Watkins.
Okay. And I saw Miss Lawrence from STOP. And we have TAP represented, Mr. Daniels from Tri-County, and I saw Billy on the call as well from AECP. So it looks like LNCAG is the only one missing. Nobody from LNCAG. Okay. So next slide. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about our 2021 LIHEAP expenditures, and the news is not particularly good there. We are pretty far behind in our spending, and as you know, the current grant ends on September the 30th. Right now, we have an unexpended balance of about $8 million, and then of that, about $1.6 million is unobligated at this point. Those are funds that we have been told by agencies that they do not think they will be able to spend. Our production is down on the 2021 LIHEAP by 69% from what our 2020 LIHEAP production was. Right now, the invoice deadline is September 7th. And so we have a long way to go and a short time to go there. We did request a possibility of an extension from DSS, and they are entertaining that. We are hopeful that they will grant a 6-month extension. We are still awaiting a final word on that. I hope to hear something within the next couple of days, which would certainly be good news for us to have some additional time to spend this money, because otherwise any of the unexpended balance will go back to DSS. And that has not happened in my tenure here. And so I am hoping that we will be able to pull through here and spend as much of this money as we possibly can. Next slide, David. Here is the most recent little expenditure chart that Michelle put together for us. You can see our production. This is all of, including all of the invoices that have been submitted thus far. And you can see our production is at 494 units, and that is really way down. And we are at 42.49% expenditure rate. So you can see there that some folks have managed to spend all of their money. Some of them have, we have recaptured some money. Some has been reallocated, but certainly not all of it. Okay, next slide. And as we are talking about the end of 21, the 22 LIHEAP allocation is right around the corner. The award letter is pending from DSS. We are expecting that any day now, and the 22 award is $14,884,000, a little over that. Generally, the contract period is from August 1st through September 30th of the following year. Since we do not have the award letter yet, we have pushed this back to September 1st. If there are any of you, though, that this is a problem for, let us know, because if we do get the award letter very soon and you need 22 LIHEAP allocation by, well, you should have plenty of options for 21 LIHEAP money, but if this is problematic for you, do let us know. But that's going to be another almost $14.9 million on the table. And so, you know, we're really going to have to push for production. I know you all are busy folks, but it's going to get a lot busier here in the next 6 to 12 months. Okay. The DOE 22 allocation, those contracts are now in CAMS for signature. Our formula allocation for 2022 is $5,164,290. Of that, $4,261,446 are for program cost, and a little over $902,000 of it is for training and technical assistance. Also this year there is a readiness allocation, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide, but this amount is $272,646. The contract period is retroactive back to 7/1 through 6/30 of next year. As I said, the contracts are now in CAMS for signature and submit them back, then we can make your funding available to you in Hancock. So that you can begin to draw that money if you need it. Your regular allocation money and the weatherization readiness money are in the same contract. It is in a separate line item in your budget, but it is separate in Hancock because the weatherization readiness money has to be tracked separately from the regular allocation. Okay, next slide. Now, the Weatherization Readiness Funds is a new set aside within the appropriation that came out for 22 WAP. And I think there was a total of $15 million that was pulled from the appropriation for weatherization readiness, and then it was distributed to all of the states and territories. And we didn't get a huge amount of money. It was, what did I say, what was it, David? Backup one. 272. So, you know, it's not, like I said, not a huge amount, but it is a helpful amount. It can only be used with the same grant award, and it absolutely must result in a completed DOE job. We are allowed to make the policy that controls the allowable measures and the maximum amount per job. And so you will be hearing more about that. It is similar in its use to the WDR funds that you have from HIE. But these are DOE funds. They will have to be tracked separately. They cannot be commingled with, you know, other funding the same way that the WDR money can. And so, like I said, some of you are only getting a few $1,000s from it. So, you know, it'll probably be enough to maybe do one project. Some of the larger agencies are getting a little more than that, but there will be more on this topic as we get into it a little bit more. But that is something very new for this year. Okay, so let's take a little break right there and see if there are there any questions in the chat?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now.
Okay. All right. Then we will move on to the bipartisan infrastructure law allocation, which we are calling the bill funds. And this is part of a $3.5 billion piece of legislation that provided a generous amount of funding for infrastructure projects in a number of different areas, but $3.5 billion went to weatherization overall. And Virginia's share of that is $65,591,635. So if we ever hoped for more money, now's the time because we've got it. Of that amount, $54,119,682 are in program funds. We have a little over $11.4 million in TNTA. We do not have an official DOE award document on this yet. We submitted the SF 424 and the 424A budget back in April. And these funds will initially be for a 5-year contract period, and it'll be retroactive back to 7/1/22 through 6/30/27. The way that the legislation was written, there is no end date on it. Says that they will be available until used. But DOE is starting off with a 5-year period. And at the end of 5 years, I suppose if the money is not expended and has not been rescinded by any act of Congress, then another grant agreement or amendment will be issued. Next slide. Okay, this timeline is from a DOE webinar that was presented last week, and it just kind of shows what the 5-year plan is. Back in March, and the initial 424 and 424A was supposed to be due April 1st. Well, we submitted ours, no, April 29th it was, and we submitted ours, and about 3 hours later, DOE issued an extension to July 1st. But ours was already in, so we were a little ahead of the game. So that initial submission went in July. DOE is currently reviewing all of those from the states. And states are beginning to do their initial network meetings to assess needs and figure out where everybody's going with this. The initial release of money that we are expecting will be 15% of the total allocation. And then during the month of August and September, we will be developing our training and technical assistance plan, our monitoring plan, our final budget, holding our PAC meeting with our Policy Advisory Council, holding a public hearing, going through internal approvals, hiring some new staff. And then on October 1st, our 5-year grantee plan is due. It's very similar to the annual state plan that we do, except this is a 5-year plan. DOE will review that plan, and once that plan is approved, they will release an additional 35% of the money. So probably by November, maybe December, but I'm expecting probably in November, we will have access to half of that money, 15%, probably in the next month or so, and then another 35% in the late fall. Okay. Next slide. As I said, it's a phased funding release. This is a DOE slide as well. They are projecting the first 18 to 24 months as a planning period for states to be prepared for meeting our goals and expectations. As I said, 15% initial distribution of funds, and then an additional 35% after the application is submitted October 1st. Next slide. And then after that, the remaining 50% of the allocation is going to be based on some benchmarks that DOE has established. And here's a list of some of the things that will be considered. 30% of all units estimated to be weatherized in the approved plans are weatherized. DOE has approved our monitoring plan and inspection protocol, and that's been implemented. Our monitoring, we have to still monitor each sub-grantee at least once per year. But, with all these additional units, we're going to be doing some inspection visits on a regular routine basis. We have to show that our local quality control efforts are in place and that at least 5% of the completed units are QCI'd annually by our staff. That all grantee progress reports are acceptable and submitted in accordance with their requirements. And then DOE's monitoring of the state confirming acceptable performance. And if all of those things are happening, then we will receive the remaining 50% of the grant funds. I've not seen anything that says whether we'll get all 50% at once or whether they will release that, periodically. But we'll see how that goes. Yes, Stephen, the recording will be sent to the network, and I think I saw a question about the slides. We can send the slides too if you'd like. Next. Okay, here are some important things to note about the bill money. You cannot use the bill funds in conjunction with any of your DOE annual formula funds. including the 22 readiness funds. You can use it in conjunction with your other sources, with LIHEAP money, with the utility funds, with the WDR money. It all has to be tracked and reported on separately. But we will have to be very careful that the bill funds are not commingled with any of the other DOE formula funds, particularly the readiness funds. There are flow down requirements that will apply. Davis-Bacon Act is back in the picture, but fortunately, it only applies to multifamily projects of 5 units or more. So if you're doing, small multifamily, less than 5 units, you're in the clear. There will be more guidance from DOE on the Davis-Bacon issue and also on Buy American. We're not exactly sure yet how that's going to apply and at what level. So we will hear more about that. And then the NEPA and the historic preservation requirements that you've been accustomed to or will remain. Also, their DOE looked at the federal impacts when making decisions about these funds. It will focus on Justice 40, which we don't think will be an issue for weatherization because that's targeting federal funds to underserved communities, and that's pretty much what we do. Some attention to workforce development and also diversity, equity, and inclusion. You'll hear more about those things as things roll out. One thing to particularly note is that the program year 22 average cost per unit of $8,009 will remain constant for the entire 5-year bill period for that grant. So that could potentially cause some record-keeping heartburn later down the line, trying to, if the program year ACPU changes for future DOE regular allocation, but for the bill money, it remains at the $8,009. The agencies will have to be very careful about maintaining those averages. And the state will have to be very careful about keeping an eye on that as well. Okay, next slide. We're going fast here. Vehicle and equipment purchases with bill funds, because I think, there's going to be a lot of money that will be available for this. I know most of you have chosen to use the LIHEAP money to do that because it's a little bit less cumbersome process, because DHCD has the ability to approve the LIHEAP purchases in-house, whereas any purchases with DOE over $5,000 or $5,000 or over have to go to DOE for written approval. There has been no exception made with regard to supply chain issues. The procurement rules are the procurement rules, and so DOE has advised agencies to follow the rules in WPN 17-6, where the minimum requirements are a copy of the purchase request, how and where you're going to use the vehicles, the funding source to provide copies of 3 bids, and a statement that the lowest bid or the best value was selected. I think I will say that some of the requests that we have received for vehicle purchases have been on the slim side with information. And so we will be putting out an information notice. We're working on that will basically lay out for you what you have to submit, and a little checklist. And if you don't have it, we're not gonna be able to approve it. So we're trying to standardize that process so that everybody's doing it the same way. Okay, next. There will be Hancock changes forthcoming as needed. We know that. We probably don't know what they all are right now. Some of them, we'll figure out as we go forward. But we know that the weatherization readiness funds are new and their production has to be tracked separately, so that will be addressed in Hancock. The fact that the weatherization readiness funds must result in a completed DOE job, we have to track that. You will be able to, we've clarified with DOE that you will be able to invoice for the readiness funds once those measures are complete. And then you can invoice for the DOE, the regular weatherization measures separately from that. But if you have billed for those readiness funds, you're going to have to complete that job. So even though you're allowed to invoice it separately, we will expect a completed job. The fact that the bill funds can't be mingled with other formula funds, we have to establish rules within Hancock in the background so that it will not let you do that. And then I'm sure that there will be a slew of other things as everybody moves forward. There'll be a lot of how do we do this and what do we do about that? And so we will address those as we hit the bumps in the road. Okay. And I think that's it on the bill money. So what have we got in the chat? Anything that I haven't already addressed or?
Yeah, John Saunders has one. Says, given that agencies have already felt the need to relinquish a percentage of current funding that they've already acknowledged they cannot utilize, what are the ramifications or penalties, if you will, that agencies may face if they are not able to spend the new funds in conjunction with their regular or current funds?
Well, we will potentially have to, in the past, we've just been reallocating those funds to agencies that can spend it. But I think we're getting to a point now where, even those agencies may have trouble picking up, a few extra million. But if it comes down to it and we have to add new agencies, then we may have to consider that. If the existing agencies can't handle the load, we may have to look at doing that. We've not made any decision to do that yet, and I have been hesitant to do that. But it may be a necessary option. I don't know. This money will provide the opportunity for some additional hiring. I know it's a tough market out there, though, to get people that are qualified and to keep people that are qualified. But with the additional money, maybe the training center will have a contract with us to provide the necessary training. And the required training will be covered in that contract. The required DOE training is covered, and then the agencies will be receiving TNTA funds. We will do whatever we can to help you with the hiring and the training issues, and hopefully within that first 18 to 24 months, we will be able to increase capacity within the agencies. I know it's tough. I mean, I really understand that. Okay, and what's Mike's question?
Right. These additional funds may impact the cash flow of the agencies. Since there will be additional spending, how will this be addressed?
Yeah. Well, we will be adding additional staff here at DHCD is the plan, to help with the processing of the invoices to expedite those as quickly as we can. We have looked at the idea of doing some advance funds, but we're not there yet. We did that back during the ARA period, I believe, and it was a complicated process. But we will certainly give more thought to that issue and see how we can handle, timely processing so that you're not dipping into lines of credit and that kind of thing. We want to avoid that. And I think John had another question.
Yes. Has there been any thought or consideration to offer training for new or existing program managers?
Yes. That is something that is very high on my list this time, because I think we focus so much on the technical training that we sort of skip over some of the financial and administrative tasks. And one of my goals with this new funding is to offer some both administrative grant management, whether specific weatherization management, and financial training to the network. That has certainly been a high priority on my list of things I want to accomplish. So yes. And DOE has put together some grantee management training on the grantee level that I think we will be able to modify and use part of that as well. Another one of my goals is to redo the program operations manual. I think that our existing manual has been around for a long time and it needs a refresh, and it needs to be more comprehensive than it is. And so that's also on my to-do list.
I'm not seeing any more questions coming through on the chat. Let's see here. Mike Williams also said maybe something similar to the invoicing for high funds, which seems to be a little quicker, may work.
We'll look into that. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, the high E money is through CAMS, and that's a different process than through Hancock. So what we would have to look to see what, if anything, we can do to speed that up or okay.
I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. I don't know if anybody wants to unmute if they have a question.
And I know this is an awful lot of information that we're throwing at you at one time. And there will be a lot more forthcoming as we move down the road. A lot of unanswered questions still. The amount for the bipartisan money. The total amount, $65,591,635.
Ernest, there should be a little microphone, or you can hit Control D to unmute.
Can you unmute him, David?
No, I can't unmute anybody. I can mute them, but I don't have the ability to unmute them. Okay, I think Nancy got kicked out or lost internet there. Are you back? Nancy, you're muted.
Okay. I hit the mouse and it just disconnected the whole thing. I don't know exactly why. All right. So that's brings us down to the weatherization deferral funding. Dan, are you?
Nancy, before you go on, Sandy Jones had a question. She asked, when do we expect to know how much per agency per bill so they can think about when to hire and how many people to hire?
I would say within the next 30 days, maybe sooner. Because we'll have to, we have not done the formula calculations on that. Okay. Any more?
No.
Okay, Dan,
Morning.
I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Hey, Dan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, Nancy and David. And just wanted to mention for you all that we are in the process for the high E funds, which are the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative funds. I do understand that we have that funding that we requested in our budget. And we're moving forward with a decision package. I expect that to move here in the next week or so. Our objective with regard to the weatherization deferral repair funding is to build in that funding for as long as we can. So we, again, knowing what we know now, that there's a lot of additional federal money coming into weatherization over the next 5 years, and that being able to, for you all to be able to address the deferral repairs is going to be critical in leveraging that federal money. So what we're trying to do is build in that access to that high E money for as long as we can. Thanks everyone. We just sent out an extension for you all for the WDR program that's going to take us through the end of 2022. And that was, quite frankly, that was a stopgap measure because it took so long for the budget to get signed and we didn't know what was going on.
Hey, Dan, you got muted there. I was trying, some of the people are having trouble issue with unmuting themselves, so I was trying to make some adjustments and it looks like it muted you. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's all right. Where do you think, where do I need to start over from?
Just a few seconds. I called it pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Like I was saying, I don't have a lot for you this morning, other than to say we are working on getting support and getting approval for use of the high E money for WDR for as long as we can. We understand that, again, that there's a lot of new money coming into weatherization, and we want to be able to make sure that we can build in as much stability for this funding source as we can. So at least looking out to 23, 24, so that you all have that money. So again, we hope to have new information to share with you that's a little more definitive here in the next few weeks. I know that Billy's been doing a good job of checking in with us on a regular basis in terms of what's working for you all, what can be improved in terms of the WDR program. We appreciate that feedback. We do take it to heart. And the other thing is that we want, we know that, that the struggles with production that are present in weatherization are also present in the WDR program. We appreciate that, and we want to continue to try to work to make sure that we can continue to increase production, get to more households, get those repairs made, get those homes weatherized. So again, apologize that I don't have anything really definitive for you this morning, but appreciate the opportunity to just check in and let you know that we are working on it. We're working on building in stability for this funding source for as long as we can. So Nancy, that's everything I have. You're on mute.
Sorry. Then we will move to David, and David's going to talk about the technical monitoring and the WPN 22-8.
Yeah, just a quick highlight on the technical monitoring. We just wanted to let everybody know that we've kind of changed the way we're doing some of the audit file review. Mainly in the past, when we come out to do the technical monitorings, we reviewed the files either in the office or while we're at the client's home. To help speed this up and to give us more time on site, we've moved to a system that we are actually having the documents uploaded in Hancock under the WAP document tab. So that way we can conduct the file reviews, the documentation reviews ahead of arriving on site. That allows us to spend a little bit more time on the job site looking at the measures that are installed. And then also if the agencies or anybody has any questions or concerns, we have a little additional time to answer those instead of just trying to rush to knock out or to get through reviewing the files, looking at the measures and so forth. Couple of key highlights that we've taken away recently from recent monitoring visits is oftentimes the documentation within the heat energy audit or within the data collection forms that are collected by the energy auditors are slim to none, and it's hard for us to see what's going on, to understand what is actually happening in the home. Jason says it right. It's like, don't let it be to where we have to guess or assume what's going on. Just brief little highlights and bullet points to get through is really helpful. That also carries through the QCI process. A lot of times it seems like the QCI form that we have is just being used as like a simple checklist where you can just check boxes. Especially to throw an example out there, let's say, everybody knows that our pressure pan target is 1.0 pascals or less. If you get into a situation where for some reason the crews or the contractors were not able to meet that target, let's say that you had a really high pressure pan to begin with and you lowered them or you cut them more than half, you can say, hey, we sealed all accessible areas. We did what we could, but some of the duct was in a unaccessible area, or we're not able to properly seal that due to the SIR restrictions, and so forth. So just brief bullet points as to why things weren't installed 100% the way they should be or not meeting exact targets. would be helpful throughout that. Also, with the desk reviews, we've run into a lot of photographs and pictures that are really blurry, or just not a large and abundance of photos that really doesn't capture any of the information we need. So we're asking for quality photos, not necessarily quantity. So if, let's use a water heater, for example, we like to see pre and post pictures of the water heater. In a good post one, you can take 1 or 2 photos and capture the insulation wrap, the TPRV, the pop-off valve, piping, and the pipe insulation coming off of that. You can capture all that in one clear photo. So just focusing more time on, just a little additional time on quality photos versus quantity. Since most of us have digital cameras now, if it's blurry, don't just submit blurry pictures to us. Take just a few seconds to make sure that the pictures are coming through. So that's the biggest thing on the technical monitoring side, the biggest changes there. Now we get into the energy audit, the streamlining of the priority list. I would like to get together a small group of folks to kind of walk through a little of this in detail. Part of the WPN or PN requires us or DHCD to submit a plan or a way to monitor and control this priority list in order for them to approve it. Right now, we don't have any written policy, so we're not allowed to use that, but I would like to get a small group of folks together to discuss the priority list, so that way we can capture our monitoring needs, also modify and draft the policy to where it's functional for the agencies as well. Just some big ticket highlights. I wanted to say that one of our concerns is we don't want the priority list to turn into, like, for the auditors to put their blinders on and think that's all weatherization is. We need to make, if a house doesn't fit the specific requirements of the priority list, then the heat energy audit is still required. So it's not completely eliminating or doing away with the energy audit tool. So for folks that would be interested in the priority list or implementing that, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll get together at a little bit later time to discuss in more detail what it is or how it would be easier for the agencies to implement, and also we can draft it to where we can properly monitor that and control that. I've also thought about possibly, there's 3 priority lists, instead of releasing all 3 of them at once, I thought about phasing them in, maybe start with like a multifamily first, and then moving on to mobile homes and site builds, just to kind of control and regulate and maybe make changes as needed to the policy in order for it to flow easier. I think that's basically the general highlights I have for those 2 topics. So if anybody's interested in the priority list, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email or call me or something, and we'll get a group of people together and we'll get a brief meeting to discuss those a little bit more in detail. I think I made the changes to the meeting where folks can now unmute themselves. Not sure why that was taken away, but also I think I might have corrected that.
Okay, David, it looks like you have volunteers for your group from CHP, Project Homes, and Pitt County.
Okay. Let me write these folks down. So Megan.
Apka.
Still can't unmute. Not seeing why.
Looks like Carrie's asking a good question too, in addition to volunteering, if you can cover that one.
About electronic files.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something that we will need to check on a little bit further, because I'm not sure what DOE's view is of us veering completely away from paper files.
I think the last time I talked to them, they were a fan of both, because there's been, like, out in California, somebody's agency burnt down. They had hard copies and they lost that. So I think, from my understanding, they've been wanted both, but we can look into that a little bit more as well.
Yeah. And the question on the audio of the call, when will that be available? We can send that out probably tomorrow, David, you think?
Yeah, usually it takes a little bit for the recordings to move over to my drive. So it should be tomorrow. It'd be fine.
Okay. And when will the training for administrative staff take place? We don't have a specific date for that yet. Lance, I see you said you didn't have permission to unmute, but did you have a question? People wants to volunteer for your group as tap. David.
Yep, got him. So I know a few folks were able to unmute, so they should all have the ability if they have a microphone.
Stop. Okay. I think that's all of the questions there. So the last thing that we had on the agenda was about the new income limits. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they were out. We did send out a information notice, but I know that sometimes not everybody gets all of the information. I try to keep my list up to date, but sometimes I miss one. We've had a lot of staff changes in the last year. I just wanted you to know that those income limits are out. They are on the DHCD website weatherization page. So make sure if you have any materials that you distribute out to people, applications, information, brochures, whatever, that you put those income limits on. Make sure that you have them up to date. I know some of you do have the income limits on your individual agency websites. So make sure that you've updated those, because they did go up. Is it information notice 0322? I don't have the number right now, Stephen, in front of me, but that sounds about right. CVACL volunteering for the group. Any thoughts on when the network might go back to in-person meetings? We have been talking with the WDR staff about trying to put something together early in 23. It doesn't look like we're going back to our regular at the beach meeting in June, though. I don't think, we partnered with VACAP on that for a long time, and I think that's probably off the table at this point. So, anything else anybody wants to mention? Is there a time you'll be doing workshops in Hancock for beginners? Good question. There, we can provide some technical assistance on that. A lot of agencies have, for lack of good hands-on manuals on how to do that, a lot of the agencies have relied on each other for information, tips and tricks for the beginners. But yes, we are aware that that is needed. Steve says they have the Zendesk with videos and things. Is that helpful? Are they helpful videos, Steve? Yeah, I know once agencies start to hire new people that there will be some definite need for some additional Hancock training, and so we can we'll work on that issue as well. We have a huge to-do list. So, anybody have anything else? Well, all right, then we will end this meeting. It's great to see you all.